Incredible alumni hall. So why is that confusing? No, it's just we set up a concession stand and we sell like burgers and food. I'm saying that right now. We sell burgers. Yeah, I'm making burgers. I swear to God, you won't get salmonella or E. coli. Yeah, no. So I'm gonna be out there from literally 8 a.m. until like 2 p.m. Or not 2. Why would you want to be at the concession stand at 2 o'clock? The game starts at 2:30. You know, you can go sometime in the middle.
I'm pretty sure it's like
Not writing down. Yes.
Let me talk
Emma, could you press the door behind you? Thank you so much. Welcome everyone again to the Student Senate. We'll begin as always with a prayer. So in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead us from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, and our universe. Let us dream together, pray together, and work together to build one world of peace and justice for all. Amen. Moving right along to roll call. Our roll call question this week is: what is your favorite fall activity or pastime?
Happy business.
Drinking pumpkin spice latte.
March motion. Madeline Smith. Here, and I would say like happy business. Daniel Skirmerhorn. Faith Woods. Nolan Lyon.
Here and watching and playing football.
Miranda Cologne.
Oh, Proxy, and Halloween.
Colin Ray.
Here and I would say watching and playing soccer.
Christian Cologne. Patrick Gallagher.
Here, haunted houses.
Annika Baird. Here. And playing Fred.
Here on Zoom and watching and playing football.
Maddie Means.
Here, carving pumpkins.
Emma Eckstein.
Here, let's make golfing.
Isabel Carey. Here. And also Bobby Thompson. Cooper Scholl.
Here, jumping into houses.
Benjamin Earhart.
Present housewife.
Abraham Figuera.
Here, I would also say going to haunted houses.
Madeline Kosabuki. And here.
I'd say wearing sweaters.
Mary Griffin. Here. Ellen McComas. Christian Yoder.
Here on Zoom, and I'd say walking my dog.
Brian Kearns.
Here, Proxy, haunted houses.
Blazen.
Here, definitely Halloween.
Lizzie Martin. Monica Southern. Elizabeth Gonzalez. Michael Jacquard.
Here, watching the leaves change.
Zachary Cortez.
Here, watching.
Earl Kennedy.
Being outside when the music changes.
John Bailey.
Here, it's got to be football. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, all good.
No Thursday night?
Oh,
No Monday night? Come
Every night but Wednesday, Tuesday, football.
Ava Downey. Mary DeVoe. James Burnett.
Here and I'll say Thanksgiving.
Paul Stoller.
Right outside of Carroll, there's like this log.
where they're like turtles that hang out when it's like when they need the sun. It's like it's a little chilly, but they need the sunlight. So in the fall, you always get like 8 or 9 turtles like lined up in this one log. I like.
Great flower.
I'd probably say watching like slasher movies.
Gallagher.
Here, and I feel like playing like football with like extended family all on Thanksgiving.
Maddie.
You're going to haunted houses.
Thomas Davis. Roxy. Alan Zoma.
Here, and I haven't done it for the past 3 years, but Thanksgiving home, where it's just like the local establishment.
Madison Luna.
Here and
Elise Basin. Nina Selden.
My friends and I are weird. We pick out who we have for Secret Santa in October and we have a bracket for it.
David Watson. Caroline Cameron. Here, I would say drinking pumpkin coffee. Mabry Webb. Here, and wearing hoodies with shorts. David Holmes.
Here, and watching us beat USC.
Daniel Lau.
Here, sleeping in.
Joe Doyle.
Here, and I for sure lost this one. I did an over under that half of you would mention pumpkin spice lattes, and like I lost that one. So apparently being put to shame is my favorite thing about the class. Thank you for proving me wrong. I'm proud of you. Appreciate that.
Bella Middleman. I'm here for the pumpkin patch.
Thank you all so much. I believe we have a quorum. Moving on, are there any changes to the minutes as they've been posted for last meeting? So, unless there are any objections, into executive announcement. We have a new Senate member today. We're very excited to be joined by Bella Middleman, the new senator for Fisher Graduate District. So welcome, Bella. Once again, I want to remind you all that as elected officials, you are required to be Green Dot trained by January 1st. So please get Green Dot trained. There, you can go to greendot.nd.edu website and sign up for a training for your hall so you can get your Hall of the Year points, as well as getting yourself trained. So definitely get that done. I will have a compliance form for you all by next week to start keeping track of those who have been trained. So.
All right. Does Green Dot training carry over?
Yes. So like I did it in 2018, I think, and that counts for this. Any other questions? Any additions?
Yeah, I would just say, don't wait for someone to tell you that you're not Green Dot trained. You know whether or not you're Green Dot trained. Don't wait for the January 1st deadline to pass, because then you'll no longer be eligible for office, meaning you will not be eligible for office, right? So you kind of can assume that that means impeachment, potentially. So just like, don't let that be a problem.
What she said. Any other questions, comments? It applies to all elected officials in the student union. I don't think, Daniel, that applies to you.
So sub, class council, senate, anybody who's elected.
Great question, Daniel. Yes.
Question. We tried to get a bunch of the freshmen who are into doing Green Dot training, but like half of them at least got like waitlisted or like not, I don't know, like denied, but like couldn't get it. So it's on that, they said wait.
What do you mean by waitlisted?
That's just what I heard from them. They were just like they tried and couldn't get like the spot that they tried to.
Oh, maybe the training is full.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So just like wait till another one pops up.
Yeah, there's 6 or 7 there already on the
Okay.
list. There's one October 6th and 7th. So yeah, there's at least, if I know the spreadsheet, and some are getting added every day because calls are starting to, but I know the 6th and 7th, I do not believe it's full, but we add them all the time. Yeah.
And you can always reach out and say, hey, we've got 15 to 20 folks who need to be trained. Would you consider a date for us?
Okay.
And or sponsor with another hall. So yeah, we're always willing to try to work with you.
Farley's also the same training. So,
The moral of that story is also probably sign up sooner rather than later, right? If they're filling up.
Any other questions? Get trained. Be good, active bystanders. Moving on, tomorrow is Snake Day. It'll be held over at St. Mary's College. This is a St. Mary's event, but Notre Dame student government has been active in helping promote and get that together. I know we talked to HPC last night about leading walkovers, but definitely come by. It starts at 5, but it'll run through 7. So if you're available at any time during that, feel free to come over. There'll be sort of field games to build community among our 2 colleges, as well as a remembrance ceremony for Lizzie Seberg and those we've lost to suicide as part of Suicide Awareness Month this month, September. Any questions about that? I highly encourage you all to come, especially to show support for the St. Mary's community. Any executive announcements I missed, Alan?
Next week is resolution.
Yes.
I can go into that. Next week is resolution week. There's essentially an event every single evening of the week, from Monday through Friday. There's posters, right, at the beginning of the door, which one has the poster. I see any events that you should be interested in, and you got tickets, not tickets. We're able to register to go to the Transport event. That'll be on Wednesday, p.m. And I believe it's the first 80 people who signed up that will be getting tickets, or being allowed to get tickets. We have put a cap to the event, but it's on Zoom. More than happy to assist y'all getting on the Zoom. But if you're able, please make time for that. It's a phenomenal event that we have, and we have Amaya, thank our director, diversity, for that. But thank you.
Thank you, Al. Like you said, there's posters in the back. Feel free to take some on the way out. Any questions about that? Great. So unless there's objections, we'll move right along into general orders. I wanted to give Minu a chance to talk about SO 21-2211 since it was tabled to this week.
Yes, so after yesterday's conversation with FMB, it was pretty clear that we will need more time to think about it. Therefore, Dave and I have made the decision to withdraw the order, but we do plan to resubmit an edited version of it. There was consensus among majority consensus among FMB board members to eventually replenish the endowment with the financial response account. We just have to think more about specific dates about when that's going to happen, how it would happen. We just need more time to do that. And so we just appreciate your patience with us, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for
And David, did you have anything to comment?
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Maddie.
Motion carries. There's no vote on the motion to withdraw. So we look forward to hearing more from FMB in the future. Now, we're very lucky and honored to be joined tonight by Dr. Christine Carey-Gephardt and Ed Junkin. Christine serves as the Assistant Vice President for Student Services, and Ed serves as the Director of the University Health Services. So I know you've suffered through plenty of weeks in this semester of me coughing through meetings, as well as classmates coughing. Wanted to have a little discussion tonight about student health and well-being on campus as it relates to COVID and other respiratory diseases that we've been seeing across campus. And I'll turn it over to you, Christine and Ed, if you have any initial sort of opening statement.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for having us. What we heard was the interest for tonight was to talk a little bit about what is the general health related to COVID and the other illnesses we're seeing. Dr. Junkins will talk about that. And then there was questions about some of the policies how things are being triaged, how things are being utilized, what's the difference between grad and professional and student, undergrad student policies, as well as faculty and staff. Those are the general things that we are prepared to talk about. But before we launched into that, I wanted to make sure there wasn't another issue that we need to be aware of so that we can address it for tonight. So anything other than those kind of general things, hopefully we may get to some of your specific questions, but policies, general state of health, anything else that you want to discuss or make sure we hit on tonight with our time with you. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm wondering about sort of the exit protocols. I know like last semester, you know, there were so many options, like if you wanted to get a test before you go back home or all those things. Because I know like within Diversity Council, a lot of people have told me personally, you know, within our communities, there's still a lot of vaccine hesitancy and whatnot. Or maybe there's just less people that are vaccinated. And so I know some students do want to have that option of getting tested before they go back home. And even like multi-general households, you know, like that sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm just wondering if there's already been sort of like thought behind that, or if there isn't, which is, I guess, I mean, it's still kind of early in the year. I want to pressure you.
No, no pressure. We actually tend to try to talk months in advance. Not to necessarily say that, you know, this is what we're going to do. We're constantly always looking at the landscape, both the campus landscape, the county landscape, as well as the national landscape. So we have ideas about like, okay, this is what it looks like given where we are now. And if this were to change, get better, great. If it would get worse, like what would the things that we could institute? But yeah, I think it's a great progression as to like, as we talk about what's happening now, what are the things that we're thinking about, and then what's an exit strategy look like maybe for Thanksgiving or the semester, et cetera. Thank you. Anything else? Right. So I'm going to let Dr. Jenkins, because he's the physician, to talk a little bit about what we're seeing at UHS that speaks about campus health in general with COVID, as well as some of the other issues that students are bringing to us at UHS, and then how they're responding and the healthcare strategies that are being in place.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you. Thank you all for having me here. I think it's important for everybody to have an idea of who's talking to them. So if you'll indulge me for just a minute to let you know just sort of who I am. And I'll start with my name, Ed Junkins. And my favorite fall activity is actually making Halloween costumes for my kids. I have 5 boys, and so I've made dozens and dozens of costumes with a Singer sewing machine and a lot of hot glue and burn cleaners. So that's my favorite by far. So I'm from the Midwest. I'm from an immigrant family, African American family, blended. And my 4 sisters and I all went to Notre Dame in the 80s, all 5 of us at the same time. I graduated, I was in Morrissey Hall. Morrissey, for those. Of course, all right, I'll represent the manor today. So from Morrissey Hall, graduated in 87, trained in pediatrics on the East Coast, did residency on the East Coast, and then was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Public Health Service, where I served on the Navajo Reservation. And then I got my master's in public health and really watched epidemiology before it was cool, before everybody in the world, says, I know how to do this. And eventually, after spending years in Utah, moved with my wife, who's also a pediatrician, also a master's in public health, and also a Notre Dame grad, to Oregon, which is where she's from. And then after 30 plus years, I was called to come back to South Bend here to serve as the director of student health under Christine's supervision. And I've been here for 2.5 months. It's a service, in my opinion, and I love what I'm doing here. Talk about COVID. So, you'll hear lots and lots from physicians. You'll hear a lot from physicians who are public health people. And you'll hear a lot of opinion from all over the place. I've been working with grad students, I've been working with students for a long time. I have a good feel, I think, for student health and the needs of students on top of that public health experience. So it's unique for me to come in and think about the numbers. Let's start the conversation with why the Notre Dame campus is different. Okay, why it's different from Rice and Virginia and USC and Harvard, and why we are different here. And you might hear, well, those schools are doing this. Why aren't we doing that? Well, so Notre Dame is uniformly highly vaccinated. What does that mean? That means that all parts of our community here on the 466, 46615. What is it?
46556.
46556. Is that what it is? I used to have that memorized. So 46556 is really one of the safest geographic areas in the state, if not the region. Just simply because you're very likely going to run into people who are vaccinated and therefore not likely to be carrying the disease, not likely. Right? Very different from St. Joe's County, which is less than 50%, or maybe right at 50%, and Indiana, which is less than 50%. So let's say that we're enjoying sort of twice the rate or the percentage of immunized people around us than just outside of campus. What does that do? That helps us make some assumptions and therefore validate our observations. And that is, what is the prevalence of COVID on our campus? How much virus are we going to run into? Why can we sit in a room like this and feel pretty safe that we're not going to get COVID, and if we had it, we're not going to spread it to somebody and cause an outbreak? Well, the prevalence is was sitting at about 1%, probably less than. So let's say it's 1%. But that's 10 out of 1,000 people on this campus, maybe testing positive for COVID. Testing positive. That changes a lot of how we think, and that changes how people in the CDC and public health think. We start to feel more comfortable that as decision makers, if we have a policy that will inadvertently put people on the campus who are falsely negative, then we have a little bit more room of a margin of error, because we're not going to cause an outbreak. Very different from last year, where one infected person we would expect to infect 3 would then go on to infect 3. That's the reproductive number for those of you who are paying attention to that R naught. So with an R naught now less than 1, which is probably close to where we are, maybe we're one person might infect one other person. How would we know? How would we as administrators know over the past 6 to 7 weeks that what we're doing is working? Well, we watch a couple of things. We watch our most important group, which is the unvaccinated student group and faculty staff. We have maybe 800 to 900 people who are routinely tested. It's our asymptomatic testing. Maybe 400 or so are our students. And we have almost 0 tested positive. For the past week, up until this week, we've had only a couple who have tested positive. And that number has drifted consistently every week down, 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 down. People say, well, okay, maybe we're not testing enough. Maybe we're not testing enough. You look at Stanford, they're testing everybody every week. I'll go back to that original assumption. What is the prevalence? And because at some point in time, those of us who are paying close attention understand that the probability of you having a disease is really dependent on how specific that test is, as well as the prevalence. So the prevalence is a very important number, because we also don't want to err on the other side, which is a false positive, right? So if I said, Alan, you're positive, off you go, that means a lot, right? So where's Alan now? He's at the landing. I'm picking on you because I remember your name. And he's at the landings and he's calling his parents. He's like, well, here I am, and I hope they bring this. So we're sensitive to that. And this is different from last year. We had hundreds and hundreds of students in Q&I because We had no choice. That was the public health control measure. This year we have, last I checked, there were only a couple according to a meeting this morning. Only a handful, less than 10 are in quarantine isolation. Our other measure. So our surveillance of unvaccinated students and our Q&I numbers are low. We've been making good policy decisions. So what are some of the questions that people have? Well, what will change? How do we know that things are different? People ask about Delta wave. Well, no, the reproductive number is worse. Instead of 3, maybe it's as high as 9. Average is thought to be around 5. Every one person can infect 5 if they can infect those 5. So maybe those 5 are vaccinated. We would expect Delta to be running around. We're looking. There are all kinds of ways that we are watching for this, as I've said, and we're just not seeing it. As we feel that the policies that are in place are accurate, we're finding the people who need to be found, and we are excluding the people who we don't want to, we don't want false positives. We have to watch for measures to make sure that everybody's safe, and as long as we are tracking numbers as we do several times each week, we get together and talk about this. We're ready. And with that, it's on us to communicate this as best we can through newsletters, through videos. I made a video. Not happy about the video, how I looked, but I made it. I mean, it was 5 a.m. on Zoom, working with a bar, and I'm talking to the camera like I'm talking to you guys. Like I'm talking to my boys. I've got 4 boys in college right now, from grad school, and some of them sit every week. They're all vaccinated, and it's different. Notre Dame campus is different. Our infrastructure is different. Our ability to handle Q&I is different. Our prevalence is different, and so we have been very, very blessed and fortunate to be in a situation where, because otherwise we would be masking up. We would have limited activities. We might be hybrid, all kinds of things. But I think I'm gonna. Right there.
So I think one of the things that from looking at the medical, that then informs policy, right? So when we looked at what was the prevalence, what was the high vaccinated rate, I want to go back to last year because I'll be honest, I lived through it with you all, right? Right. At one point, like there's weekends where I'm like, oh, we just gotta get through this, we just gotta get through this, we just gotta get through this. I'm not gonna lie to you all, I watched the numbers probably, well, maybe not as much as Ed. He does it a lot. He looks at it in a different way, right? But if you remember, we had 6 or 7 safety precautions that we had last year, right? And we were all miserable, right? Can we all admit we were all miserable? Let's raise our hands. I was miserable, right? I think one of the things what I need for us to understand, our vaccination is the strongest toolkit, the piece of information we have in our toolkit. And the fact that we mandated it, which everybody hated, right? Myself included, as I was calling people going like, when are you gonna get your first vaccine? Would you like to come to the Joyce to get your vaccine? Oh, that won't work. Well, what about this next day, right? What we were able to do with the vaccination mandate and the exemption policy was to be able to take away those strategies that we felt were burdensome last year, right? So masking universally. We no longer have to mask universally. Why do we mask in certain places? Because we are bringing in people who we don't know about their vaccination status. Now you can argue like, well, I go out in St. Joe County and I go to Martin's or I go to Finney's or I go to, Wuchie or I go, yeah, you're right. If I were you, I'd be masking up, right? I would be masking up. I go to Martin's and I mask up, right? So part of it is you might have to have certain safety measures depending upon where you live and how you live, right? As a staff member, I have a household that is much more vulnerable than the households that you live in on or off campus. So if you think about if you're in a residence hall, the vulnerability of the people in there, the most vulnerable people in that in your residence halls are your unvaccinated. Okay? And so what we say is, if you're unvaccinated, we want you to wear a mask as much as you can. But the people who are vaccinated are not vulnerable, right? It's the unvaccinated that are vulnerable. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She's vulnerable. She's vulnerable to me actually going to Martin's more than being at Notre Dame. So I actually get surveillance tested, or I keep track of myself, not because I worry that I'm going to get sick, because my chances of getting sick are very low. And especially being around you all and being on this campus is very low. But my daughter's vulnerable. And so based upon her vulnerability, and that's where faculty and staff are different in their vulnerability than perhaps you all are, right? So when people ask, like, why do faculty and staff get the voluntary surveillance testing? It's because they are going home to immunocompromised people in a different way than you are. Their congregate living is different than your congregate living. They have people who can't get vaccinated. Now, we do have people on campus who can't get vaccinated, and for a variety of reasons, and we respect that. And we try to protect them the best that we can using our safety measures. But I want to say some of the things that when we look at the policies, we often think about, like, why does this group get this and this group not get this? That's based upon policies based on equality. What we tried to do this year is really look at, and that's what we did last year. Everybody had to do this, everybody. And what we did this year is like, look, a faculty and staff member is different than a student, right? And a student we need certain things for them to be able to do. So you all have the fast pass, right? The fast pass is, if you're not feeling well, you can immediately go to the website, the covid.nd.edu, go to the diagnostic, and you can hit the fast pass, and it automatically schedules you for a test that day, as long as it's within the window of the testing site being that day. If you do it after the testing site's closed, it schedules you automatically for the next day. What does it schedule? It gives you a time frame. So people are like, well, what if it interferes with my class schedule? Well, it's from 9 to 4 when the testing site is open. So hopefully you might have a 15, 20 minutes. So you're not bound by a particular, if you fast pass yourself, right? We also allow you all to call UHS. Now, I know you all like UHS, you can't get through. I need you to know they field on Mondays close to 187 calls a day. That's 30 an hour. And the effort is valiant. So I want you to know what happens is when you call in and you get pushed to voicemail, there's somebody on the other line that is pulling your voice message off, and you're going into a queue. And those nurses and the other people that help call back. And what they're doing is they're trying to figure out, like, it's less likely COVID. Remember last year, everything was COVID. This year, because of who we are, it's less likely that it's COVID. But I need you to know, we refer what, 50 some odd students a day?
50 days. So we go about 30% of our calls. You guys look around your classrooms and the dining halls, and people are coughing and wheezing and sneezing and like, oh, there's COVID everywhere. And 120 to 30 calls an hour, starting Monday at 8. And of those, we said about 30% to 40% over for testing. So that's 40 to 50 per day. Lately, we've had zero, none positive. And it's mostly sore throat, about your own throat. Sore throat, congestion, coughing, the majority of the symptoms. Is there overlap with COVID? You bet. By the way, the COVID virus, before it became the SARS COVID virus, was the #2 reason for the cold. So for years, I taught medical students that rhinovirus and COVID were the #1 and 2 reasons for the common cold before COVID became really awful, this coronavirus. But you're going to see way more often, and we test positive for RSV, the respiratory virus. We're seeing influenza now, mono, strep, on top of rhinovirus. Hand, foot, and mouth disease, if you know anybody who's gotten rash and nasty looking. So we're seeing a lot of that. All the more reason for you to practice good hand washing. If you are sick, stay home, mask up, do the best you can, give us a call, and we will refer you for testing, 50 a day, and maybe less than 5% are positive of all of our calls.
So let me then say, what's another differential, right? And these are things that you might not know. And what we talked about is we want to communicate better, right? So we want to know what the questions are, which is why we're now doing a regular newsletter, right? About the questions that come up through you all, student government, through HPC, through the calls that we get from students. Another differentiation between what faculty and staff have and what students have is faculty and staff have a place to quarantine, right? When we presume they're positive, they can go home, they can go to their space. What do we do to you all? We put you in the landing. So we put you, I mean, okay, I have to admit, there were days I wanted to go to the Fairfield last year. I wanted to I wanted to red pass myself to be able to go spend, a night or two over the hill. But here's the way, we disrupted your life, right? We said to you, if you get fast pass, bring your stuff, come, and until we get your test results, you have to go to a hotel or you have to go to Q&I, right? Now what we have available is a fast test, which if you are an undergrad, or if you're a student, you will get what we call the rapid PCR test. So it's the same gold standard as it's still a nasal, but faculty and staff get sent out to LabCorp, right? And those results come back overnight. You actually will get a result that within an hour, or depending upon how many tests are in front of you. And why do we do that? So that when you go there, you know, like, I'm going to Q&I, or I'm going to I because I'm positive, versus, whew, it wasn't that. I can take my backpack, I can take my sleeping bag, I can take my blanket, and I can go back home, right? And so we were trying to nuance and change things to fit who you are and the way that different people live. And so what I would ask you not to think about is looking at equality as much as equity. What is it that people need given their context? And that it makes more sense for us to fast pass students and to do a rapid test, so we're not pulling them in and out of Q&I. Whereas what we do with faculty, because of their vulnerable populations, because they can Q&I at home with their families, that they are undergoing a different testing procedure than the students. And so what I want to do is show the differentiation is not based upon denial or exclusion, but is actually an affirmation of who you are and the ways that you live and the people that you engage with. So that's why there's a difference in surveillance testing. I want to go to the exit testing. If you think about exit testing, what I think Dr. Junkin said, and I love this analogy. Is the wet log your analogy? So he stole it, and so I steal it from him. I love this. When we think about last year, we were all basically a tinderbox. So COVID's a flame, and we were logs. You put us up against the flame, and we just like exploded. What the vaccine does is it basically coats the log in water. And anybody knows if you've tried to light something that is waterlogged, it's really hard to do it. And that's what the vaccine does. So I know people like, well, I'm going home to someone, or I'm going to New York, or I'm going to, a region that is highly susceptible, or I'm going from here, I'm going home to my family, and I want to make sure I'm not bringing it to you. Well, if you're unvaccinated, you're in a weekly surveillance testing protocol, so we know you don't have it. And if you're asymptomatic as a vaccinated person, more likely than not that you don't have it, more so. And so our question is, we're not going to exit test at this point because we're not seeing that there's a prevalence enough that it would make sense for us to do that sort of grand scale exit testing, because it utilizes a lot of resources in order for us to do that, which, because we're not masked, we're now seeing more respiratory illnesses that we didn't see last year. We had no flu last year, none, because we were masked, we were hand washing, we were social distancing. We're not doing that now. And so that's why we're seeing more RSV. That's why we're seeing more influenza. That's why we're seeing more communicable diseases. I don't think y'all want to go back to masking, right? And so that was emphatic now. So what we would say is we need to keep those public health measures that are minimal, and those are the ones that we need to do. And we're recognizing it's probably not COVID. If we suspect it's COVID, we will test you. I know that there's a sense that UHS is not testing. No, we are testing. We're just recognizing that we would rather test you and get you in for strep first or for other things, rather than waiting for us to rule you out for COVID, which we know you probably don't have COVID, and then delay your treatment. Last year, we delayed your treatment to determine if you were COVID positive or not. Now we have the luxury of saying it's probably not COVID, given what you've told us. So we're going to go ahead and treat. If we suspect or we think, we're going to send you on. If there are certain conditions, there's no question we're sending you on. So that's the transparency of why we're thinking what we're thinking. So let's stop there and see what other questions or things that we've sparked for you or follow-up comments, questions that you'd like to offer. I'm going to come over here and then maybe over there. Okay. Great.
I know there's been talk federally about booster shots. As a university talked about this, or what that could possibly look like next semester.
Yeah, I'll start. Rochelle Walensky from has publicly stated that there are certain risk groups that should be the first in line for booster shots, and that includes 65 years of age and older, those people 18 to 50 who have severe illnesses are really eligible in the queue for the Pfizer booster, which is the one that right now has been provisionally approved. Very recently, Friday, with clarification this week, individuals in certain high-risk occupations and situations, while the science isn't perfectly conclusive, she has said that this group, such as healthcare workers, would benefit from a different perspective, in that if this group were to get sick, then those frontline workers are going to be taken out the community's ability to care for everybody else, such as nurses, such as those people who are in respiratory therapists. What does that mean for the community here? Again, I'll say that the majority of people in this room and on this campus fall into a very low risk. Most people here were very recently immunized, that is, within the last 6 to 8 months, and almost certainly have a robust immune response. We are talking about what a booster shot means and if it were to happen, when that might occur. So it's too early for me to say, or for us to say, yes, booster, and this is when it's going to be. Probably the best way that Lindsay said, the booster shot is something that we walk towards, not run towards. There's some thought that's going to go into it. And then I'll add that it is far better for us to vaccinate more as a public health measure than to booster those who already have been vaccinated. I know that's not what you asked, but that's just sort of the plug. That the math supports more people getting shots than individually. You might that. Yeah, but stay tuned. That we'll eventually talk about that.
We do talk about it. We look at it all the time. And so, yes, we are talking about it. At this point, there are no plans to do a booster clinic, but if that were to be a decision, we would definitely do something here on campus. But at this point, we're not.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Hi.
Hi.
Right at the very first week of school, I went to a lunch at the dining hall with a couple of my friends, and one of our friends had been positive as a breakthrough case. And those of us who were sitting a little farther from her were not identified as close contacts. Even though we had hugged her and we were all kind of in the same vicinity as her. And I was one of the ones who didn't get contacted as a close contact. And so I called UHS and asked if I could get a test, just to be sure, because I don't want to be responsible for possibly having something else on someone who may be unvaccinated. And after it took a little while to get through to them, and then once I did, they asked if I had any symptoms. I was like, no, I feel fine. I just would really like to get tested if at all possible. And they told me no. And that was a little frustrating. So I kind of want to know like the reasoning behind that. I had some friends who have also had similar situations, also felt fine, but just wanted to make sure. And were told that I even had a couple who just ended up being like dishonest in the symptomatic form so that they could get a test. So I was kind of wondering like why that is.
So we do get calls for people who are asking, I believe I'm a contact. The definition of a contact is the way it's applied here, and what we believe is really working well is a close, call it intimate contact, where it is a roommate or somebody with whom you're very close, a significant other, for example. Primarily, as when we do contact tracing, we do the web software that allows us to see you and what you've been in contact with and who they've been in contact with. And we can go down to floors, we can go into classrooms, we can look at other groups. We can't look into dining halls, obviously, because that changes momentarily, moment to moment. But the line had to be drawn from a UHS standpoint at the contact tracers will contact you in order to be tested for contact tracing. Okay, because of your concern for contact. You're not the only one. We've gotten several calls like this. My nurses, our nurses, know not to say, you know, if somebody really wants to get tested and they're worried that they have an illness, we will refer you. Okay, they know not to turn somebody away who's really symptomatic. When it comes to, I'm afraid I was in contact, they're going to tell you our contact tracing protocol is really limited to this. Okay, how do you know that's working? Because we follow all those contact tracing day fours, and we're seeing 0 to 1%. We started off the year with more liberal, sort of wider contact tracing policies that captured a lot more, where it wasn't one person and 4 names, it was one person and 30 names or 20 names. And we just weren't capturing all of this, which was overwhelming for this system. And so that is probably the best answer I can give you, and I apologize for your experience. We really have to limit it to what our contact tracing protocols say, and that's why our nurses said it. But if you called and said, I've got a sore throat, I'm coughing, I'm really worried, I have COVID, we're going to say, okay, let me get you tested. You're welcome.
Yeah, and I want to kick it over to our Senate members on Zoom if possible. We have a question from McLean Farrell. Can students going home or traveling internationally for breaks, fall or winter, where countries or may require tests for entry, get quote unquote exit tested on campus, or would they have to seek on campus testing?
So is this students going home or traveling internationally? If there is a requirement for a testing, and you can show us that that's where you're headed, we will work with you to get you tested. But what we're not going to do is, hey, I want to go. So for example, what's interesting is a lot of people, remember last year, if you went into Massachusetts, everybody had to be tested. What we're actually now seeing is the difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated. And so people can show their vaccination status and they're not required. Like, for example, if you go to Chicago, there are some places you have to show that you've been vaccinated in order to get into that venue. What if you're not unvaccinated? What if you're unvaccinated? Well, you should be doing your weekly surveillance testing. And so if you're showing you're doing your weekly surveillance testing, you should have that test. So yeah, call UHS and we'll set something up. But what we're not going to do is, hey, I need to get home. I want to go this place for this weekend. Again, we're trying to limit it so that we have tests and can get people in who need it the most very quickly. And we don't want to do it just based upon people's personal travel. But if there is a documented requirement, we will work with you to get you tested.
So I have a question about, excuse me, about teachers and hybrid teaching.
there are a few of my teachers that they have like the Zoom option where like the classes are recorded. So if you miss a class, considering like a lot of people are missing classes because of like non-COVID illness, they're able to either go to the recorded class or some of them live stream it. But you have to like email the professor for the link. However, that's only a handful of my teachers. The majority of them don't offer a way for you to receive the content from that class if you missed it. Is there anything that well, first off, can you talk about like the hybrid like limitations, like things that you've told teachers, please don't do this, and we want people to be in class, and maybe some ideas for like how, like I missed a few days of classes and it was kind of a mess getting caught up, like what could help with that kind of situation?
Yeah, so I mean, I think so this is an academy decision. And if you remember, the academy, because of social distancing, right? We were in classrooms where everything had to be technologically available, right? So with us going back to full capacity in our classrooms, the decision was we're not going to offer a hybrid model. Now, what is required is professors have to allow you, if you have the excused absence, you have to be allowed to make up that work or to provide. And it's up to the faculty member always has discretion over his or her classroom, right? So I can decide that I'm going to record my lectures, where somebody else is like, well, you can't record a lab, but this is how we will allow my students to make up the work. And so, yeah, you are seeing variability among it because the faculty member has a list of options that he or she can utilize. But what they can't do is offer hybrid to this person, but not to this person. And so because we were hybrid across the entire campus, it has to be that you can allow students to make up, but you shouldn't be offering hybrid, because if some offer hybrid and others don't, you could fall into liability and discrimination issues. And so when the academy decided that they were going towards in person, at that point they had to draw the line to say you can do these things and you can offer a hybrid to the entire class, but you can't offer it to an individual because you're giving one student access over and above other students.
Okay, sure.
So if I went to a conference and I said, okay, guys, on Thursday, folks, on Thursday, we're all going to Zoom together, I'm giving equal access to everybody. And so that's different than me saying, but I'll give it to you, but you're doing this, I'm not going to give it to you. And so it's actually protecting the faculty member as well as the students from any sort of discrimination.
For clarification purposes, if I were sick and I was an excused absence and I would email the teacher and say, can I please have access to this class? They're not allowed to give me a link for hybrid, or are you saying that they need to give it to every single person if one person gives it?
They need to give it to everybody.
Okay.
And they're not supposed to be giving you
hybrid at all.
Hybrid at all.
Okay, sure, thank you.
But I'm not gonna police the classroom. The academy has jurisdiction over the academy, right? Thank you for asking that. Yeah. It's different than last year. That's been tough.
We were very.
Yeah.
So I was sick like a few weeks ago, called UHS, and it kind of was the opposite procedure that you described, where I expressed multiple times how I didn't think I had COVID, and they tested me, which was totally fine. And I came back negative, and then they were like, you're good to go. And I was like having trouble breathing, very severe cough, and like I just felt like they weren't listening to my concerns. Yeah. And I finally got through to them a few days later, and I totally don't envy them. I know they get a lot of calls, but like I got through to them finally, and then they were kind of like, the best we can do is a virtual appointment, where they still didn't really address my concerns. And I had a roommate with similar symptoms, and so we were just wondering like, if it's just better for us to go into the South Bend community and go to an urgent care or something of that sort if UHS isn't going to address what we're concerned about, and if UHS is supposed to address that, like what changes are you planning on making to make the procedure better for students? Like I personally like don't have a way to get to an urgent care, so like I was asking around to see if someone could take me and see if our schedules will meet up, and it's just a lot of work as a student or UHS is advertising if you feel ill, but then our concerns are limited to
Yeah, let me, first of all, what is your name?
that. Veronica?
Veronica, yeah, let me apologize for what happened in your experience, and that's obviously not what we're looking for. You know, we have nurses and physicians at UHS, and you'd get really outstanding care if you came to our clinic, which is you could see us for free. You should be able to see a provider for free. We do tests, you know, that you get charged for testing, but to see a physician to be examined. So really, what should have happened is, and I don't know what the dialogue was, but what should have happened is maybe you call back. We expect anybody to call back and say, "I am not better," and then you should be seen by a provider, by one of my physicians or myself, and be examined for pneumonia. Like I said, 1%, 3% chance that our symptomatic students have COVID. That's a 99% chance. You very likely have something else, but that doesn't mean you're not sick. And so what should have happened is that we put you on the provider list, not telemedicine. It's on the provider list, and we should have been able to see you within that day or at the latest the next day, in one of our physician offices. Under perfect circumstances, you call, you can get an appointment for really anything you want to come in and talk to us. And we do anything that a general practice urgent care clinic does, including x-rays and laboratories and what needs to happen. And so I will look into it. As far as what we're doing, the call volume has really been the bottleneck for us. And so with Christine's help, we were able to get people in to help us with the phones and take voicemails off so that our front office can better manage calls to get you on provider schedules so that we can put them in front of our nurses. So that people who do wander in, we can, triage and move on. We are an appointment-based center where we used to be a walk-in urgent care, which was piles of students in our waiting room, and that just made things, harder and worse. So, so that's what my hope is that we fix the phone issue with the sheer volume of calls that we weren't expecting, frankly. And then you should be able to get onto a provider's schedule, your roommates, or anything. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Veronica, for that question.
I hate to bring up another specific case, but I had a friend who had a fever the other day, and so she called UHS to try and get an excused absence for her classes because their teachers required them. But UHS said they would call her back, and then by the time they called her back, it was after testing center had closed. And so she couldn't get a COVID test until the next day, so she couldn't see a provider until the next day. But her teacher, the UHS wouldn't give her an excused absence or verify it. They said she had to see a provider, so she had to go into class while she had a fever because she couldn't get an excused absence. And I just want to know if there's any other way that that could be taken care of.
So what we're trying to do and what the academy, if UHS writes an excused absence, the professor has to take that excused absence. But a professor doesn't need UHS to give an excused absence. So if a student has talked to a UHS triage person or provider, there's a visit summary or a secure message that is sent to your patient portal that you can provide to the professor to say that I have seen or I have talked to somebody at UHS. And so I've been talking to the academy to say that any professor can excuse anything, right? You can call me as a professor and I can say, yeah, sure, I'll excuse you. Or did you go to UHS? Yes, I did. Show me the visit secure message that you got from UHS. So I guess the first question I would ask is, did that happen? And if that didn't happen, then we need to know that didn't get followed through on. Second, an excused absence can come from the professor directly. It doesn't always have to come from UHS, but we've agreed with the academy. We will not only a provider can write an excused absence because we agree just because a student has certain conditions doesn't necessarily mean that they should be across the board taken out. But a professor can always decide he or she is going to be willing to excuse that student. So we're trying to get them to understand, like, they actually have agency and power, and we don't want to share your personal information with them, right? We don't want to show it, but you can choose to show that, here's my visit summary, or here is what the excused absence if you actually do see a provider. We're trying to help the academy understand, like, if a student has been in contact with UHS, it is documented through their secure message to them. And they can show that yes, they did call UHS. But you can't call us and be like, well, they really sick, should they have not come back? Could they have come to class? We don't want to get into that conversation with them. So we're trying to provide documentation that you as the student can provide to them. And so, you know, I guess that's an ongoing conversation with them that we're trying to address and try to help them understand, like, they have agency and power in this that doesn't necessarily have to put you all in a huge spot that you have to only see a provider in order for them to.
And I'll add to that, that with the large call volume this year, and I'll qualify that in the past, our front office, our nurses have never had to manage so many calls. You know, this year students are extremely conscientious about not wanting to infect their friends if they have a fever or they're sick, or there's worry or anxiety. So there's a lot more call, a lot more illness as people come together and mingle. As we've had to respond to that, we've now put in this secure message feature that all of our, so I don't know, you may or may not have gotten this, but every call that we get, we send now a secure message so that if needed, you can show that to your faculty member. And the majority of faculty members that we have heard about have been accepting that as a, oh, you made contact, oh, you must really be sick. And also, I'm pretty sure that the code says that, you know, if you come in and get seen within 1 or 2 days, then an excuse can be created by the provider that would help you from that 18 months. All right. Okay. Even though it was the next day. And I need to probably go to this men's mental health.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I apologize for jumping out early. I'm handing it off to Christy.
So I can't answer medical questions.
You're doing a great job.
I'll try.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Or is that a good place to stop for you all? So let me say this. Thank you. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for helping us to get better, right? There are, we're different this year, right? It is different, and it's hard. It's hard to see, and it's understandable that people are like, "What are you doing?" Right? I need you to know we're very thoughtful. I sit in a COVID meeting every day, and we discuss certain things, whether it's a policy, or whether it's the numbers, or whether it's what's happened, like through the CDC, et cetera. Please communicate with us and say, here's what we're thinking. We have committed to doing more regular newsletters like that came out on Tuesday. You know, if videos are better, I know the one on Tuesday was long, we're catching up, right? So we're trying to be more targeted, and we're trying to answer specific questions. So we are trying to communicate better with you all, but we also, and if there's something specific, pass it on to Maddie, or pass it on to Alan, or pass it on, and they'll get it up to us. Then we're like, okay, the next newsletter, or maybe we need a video, or maybe we need this. Second, we're willing to do this, right? We're willing to go to Diversity Council. We're willing to go to different places and try to, you know, bridge the knowledge gap, bridge and be more transparent. We are not doing anything behind closed doors to not take care of you. Everything we do, we think about all the time about how to do it. And we do mess up, and we might not respond the way that you think we should, then communicate back to us, right? There's a feedback form on the UHS website, right? There's a little box that says, if you want to give us feedback, use it, right? Use it. Let us know, like, I had this experience, or, you know, this was really frustrating, right? And part of it is me communicating to the faculty member. It's like, I had a faculty member said, you mean I can excuse the student? I'm like, yes, you actually have more power than I do. Like, you can excuse the student for whatever. You don't have to come to UHS. You don't have to come through anywhere. Like, you as professor have total control over your students, right? Well, how do I know they're really sick or not? I'm like, well, if they came to UHS and UHS like gave them a visit summary, they were sick. Now, whether or not you want them in your class, that's your call. So part of it is we're trying to stay in our lane, but we're also, you need to know we are here to care for you. I think the other thing I would say is things change, right? And so as things change, we're going to adapt and we're going to move. If by chance there's a Lambda takes off or Mu takes off, we're watching it. And we are trying to prevent what happened last year to not occur again. And we are trying to figure out what are the best tools. And we feel like we have a very good strategy right now. But that doesn't mean we're going to hold to our strategy if things start to change. And I need you to know that. What keeps me up at night is you. I worry about you constantly. And did we miss something? Did we create a policy that's not going to keep you well, but also the public, us well? And so with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here and to hear what you're thinking, to hear what you're feeling, to see your frustrations, to see where we can do better, and to know that this isn't a one and done. This is an invitation to be in communication with us and to help us ultimately serve you. So, thank you. That's okay. I just want to make sure there wasn't a question coming in.
No, I believe it.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you once again. If there are any sort of general points of discussion beyond that, feel free to raise them now, or we can talk afterwards. I'll certainly be around afterwards, as well as my office hours again on Friday from 11 in the morning to 1 p.m. Feel free to walk in. We can continue this conversation, see what we can build. But if there are no other points, we can move right along into mindful or new business. Mindful training has been on the agenda for multiple weeks. I'm excited to say that we're confirmed next week. We'll have a staff member from MSPS joining us to lead us in mindful training. Very excited about that. Besides that, I have not received any resolutions or legislation. So again, if you want to talk to me about legislative initiatives, feel free to come by office hours. Feel free to talk to me afterwards. And then announcements. So, any announcements? Yes.
So I compiled the list of all the resident health food services from all the presidents and VPs, and I've compiled it. Everything's ready to go. I'm going to send it out to the presidents and VPs over the week so they can give it out to everyone. The only thing I need is this Buchanan Hall rep here. What times do you guys serve? Because they just said every night.
We serve every night, 9:30 to 12:30 on weekdays, and on weekends, 11:30 to 2:30.
Thank you.
And we go till half hour after that.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Yes.
This Saturday, if you're hungry from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., come to the sophomore concession stand. Non-sophomores are invited. We have a box of class of 2024 towels to give away. And we'll have like waters and stuff. So come by.
If I show up at 8 a.m., will your food be ready?
You can have a water or a towel.
Yeah.
Cabaret this Friday from 5:30 to 7:30.
Yes, Kate.
Chris Cafe, 9 to 11 tomorrow. We had a performer drop out, so if you want to take the stage and show your talents, I need a Sonia. Email me or Melena or something.
Yes.
Clarity Fights is this Friday. Like 12:30 to something. It's
Solid.
fun.
Yeah.
I guess we stopped it.
All right, so Exalt is this Friday from 7:30 to 9. It's in the Silicon Sacred Heart.
Yes, Faith.
Black Cultural Arts Council is having a talent show in Washington Hall. It's at 7 on Friday, and the link is in their Instagram bio. Tickets are $5.
I was gonna run through them.
Yeah.
So before we meet again, we'll have Let's Talk About Race at 6 next Monday in the Geddes Coffee House. We will have the Racial Justice Prayer Service at the Grotto that night at 8 p.m. again on Monday. On Tuesday night, Sub will be showing in the Heights, I believe in Visitation Hall, but location a little bit flexy. Before that, at 7, there will be an Exploring the Complexities of Latinx Identities panel in Visitation Hall. And then at the end of our Senate meeting next Wednesday, will be overlapped with Terrence Floyd's address speaking for my brother, which will be happening in Yankee as well as on Zoom. And I'll announce the Thursday, Friday events next week on Monday or on Wednesday.
And then next Thursday is also Ladasha meeting, but I guess we can talk about it.
Yes.
You said that the Terrence Floyd thing is during Senate, right?
So it starts at 7. So if we are snapping, we can get it done. But if not, it'll overlap. Elise.
Oh, just a note, we're working on, if you're one of the first 300 people to register for the Terrence Floyd event, so we'll be in person. We're working on getting a mechanism to get you guys some tickets so that you can go and like officially confirm your attendance and registration. Beyond that, the overflow is on the deal. Where, so if you registered and you're like, oh, I didn't get a confirmation, like it's happening.
And if you didn't register yet, register anyway, and you'll get the live stream link, even though there's no longer a space for the in-person. That'd be so good.
Any other announcements? Cool. Is there a motion? Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, have a good night, everyone. I love you. Thank you.
I just texted you.
Yes. I okay, great.
No.